Quentin Tarantino has been documenting his favorite films for over 3 decades. We're talking Sight and Sound polls, a 400-page book, podcast appearances, and countless interviews where he just can't stop himself from evangelizing about movies most people have never heard of. I've got a banned Swedish exploitation film here. I've got a Pixar movie he compares to the greatest Western ever made. And there's one 1970s revenge thriller he loved so much he literally named a company after it. These aren't just recommendations. They're the films that built everything from Kill Bill to Pulp Fiction. Let's break it down. Peter Bogdanovich was one of the hottest directors in Hollywood after The Last Picture Show and Paper Moon. Then came Daisy Miller, and his career never really recovered. This 1974 Henry James adaptation cost around $2.2 million and starred Sybil Shepherd, who Bogdanovich was dating at the time. Critics absolutely savaged it. William Friedkin reportedly said Bogdanovich was pussy-struck. The studio head at Paramount told him straight up, "You're Babe Ruth, and you just bunted." You'd think Tarantino would ignore a film this dismissed, but in cinema speculation, he gives it one of the book's most passionate defenses. He writes that the film gains power as it progresses and builds to a gut-punch ending. He calls it very funny, yet profoundly sad. The chapter also serves as a quiet tribute to Barry Brown, the film's male lead who took his own life at 27. Tarantino cast Bogdanovich as a voice in Kill Bill before Bogdanovich died in January 2022. MoMA screened the film in September 2024, calling it an extraordinary tour de force. This chapter feels like a thank you note. This Swedish exploitation film, also known as Thriller, A Cruel Picture, is one of the most extreme movies Tarantino has ever championed. Director Bo Arne Vibenius shot it with Christina Lindberg in the lead. It was banned by Swedish censors and cut from 107 minutes down to 82. The eye-gouging scene used an actual cadaver, and Lindberg discovered that hardcore footage had been inserted into the film using a body double without her knowledge. She left the industry by 1975. Synapse Films finally released uncut versions on DVD in 2004 and 2005, restoring over 20 minutes of footage. Tarantino ranked it 4th on his Cinescape magazine list of top exploitation films. His exact words, "It's one of the roughest movies I have ever seen in my entire life, and one of the only movies I could imagine someone being afraid to watch." Here's where it gets interesting, though. Elle Driver's eye patch in Kill Bill is a direct homage to Lindbergh's one-eyed protagonist. Daryl Hannah's look, the coordinated wardrobe, the vengeful femme fatale energy. It all traces back to this film most people have never seen. Tobe Hooper directed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, one of the most influential horror films ever made. But his 1981 carnival slasher The Funhouse never got the same love. It cost around $2 million, was shot in North Miami with a cast including Elizabeth Berridge and Sylvia Miles, and made about $8 million total. It opened on 814 screens to $2.77 million. Then it just kind of disappeared. Tarantino saw it at 18 and thought it was mediocre. Scream Factory released collector's editions in 2012, and a 4K restoration in 2022. 3 decades later, he changed his mind completely. In cinema speculation, The Funhouse gets the final film-focused chapter. Tarantino praises Hooper's staging, the cynical, tawdry, and downright nasty tone, and production designer Mort Rabinowitz's creepy Funhouse set. He also uses the chapter to reminisce about seeing Hooper's Eaten Alive with a friend, laughing at Robert Englund's character, Buck. That line directly inspired Michael Bowen's character in Kill Bill Volume 1. Tarantino doesn't just recommend movies, he absorbs them. This is the film Tarantino loved so much he named his entire distribution company after it. Rolling Thunder Pictures launched in 1995 under Miramax, distributed cult classics like Chungking Express and Switchblade Sisters, and operated until the late 1990s. The name came from this 1977 revenge thriller starring William Devane and a young Tommy Lee Jones as Vietnam vets, hunting down the men who destroyed Devane's family. Linda Haynes and Dabney Coleman rounded out the cast. Paul Schrader wrote the original screenplay as a companion piece to Taxi Driver. Same themes of damaged masculinity and explosive catharsis. But Fox wanted cuts after a poor test screening, the producer refused, and the film ended up at American International Pictures with minimal release. Tarantino put it on all 3 of his Sight and Sound ballots. In May 2023, he presented a suitably worn 35mm print at Cannes and told the audience, Maybe it's a fascist movie, but it's the best fascist movie. He also named Lieutenant Aldo Raine in Inglourious Basterds after the film's protagonist, Major Charles Rainey. This movie is in his bones. Jimmy Wong Yu was the first martial arts superstar to come out of Hong Kong, and this kung fu tournament film represents everything Tarantino loves about the genre. Wong Yu directed and starred in it as the one-armed boxer facing off against a blind assassin with a deadly hat-shaped decapitation device. Tarantino ranked it 7th on his Cinescape exploitation list and claimed he's seen it like 20 times. His description: more than any of the other kung fu movies, it captured the flavor of this Marvel Comics, Jack Kirby universe. Rotten Tomatoes currently has it at 90%. The film features fighters from around the world with wildly different styles competing in an extended tournament. Sound familiar? The House of Blue Leaves sequence in Kill Bill draws heavily from this structure, and Gogo Yubari's bladed ball and chain weapon traces its lineage directly to the film's titular flying guillotine. Variety's 2003 Kill Bill review confirmed the connection. The soundtrack even uses krautrock music from the German band New, which Tarantino licensed for Kill Bill as well. He doesn't just reference his influences, he imports them wholesale. Jack Hill made Coffy for $500,000 in 18 days. It hit #1 at the US box office in its 14th week of release. By 1976, Variety reported it had earned over $4 million in rentals, and it made Pam Grier a star. The cast included Booker Bradshaw, Robert Doquey, and Sid Haig. Tarantino ranked it 2nd on his Cinescape exploitation list, calling it one of my favorite blaxploitation movies, with a violent power over an audience that's very unique. Here's the thing though, this film is the direct reason Jackie Brown exists. Tarantino changed the character Jackie Burke from white in Elmore Leonard's novel to black specifically so he could cast Grier. He even changed the last name to Brown as a nod to her role in Foxy Brown. He screened Coffy for Uma Thurman to prepare for Kill Bill. He cast Sid Haig from Coffy as the judge in Jackie Brown. Roy Ayers' funk score from Coffy was incorporated into Jackie Brown as well. Roger Ebert gave Coffy 2 stars. Gene Siskel gave it 0. Tarantino gave Pam Grier her career back. She earned a Golden Globe nomination. Robert Forster got an Oscar nomination. Sometimes the guy who runs the video store sees things the critics miss. This carnival noir starred Tyrone Power in what should have been a career-defining performance. Joan Blondell, Colleen Gray, and Helen Walker co-starred. Lee Garms handled the cinematography, and it should have been a prestige picture. Instead, studio head Daryl Zanuck feared the dark role would damage Power's image, barely promoted the film, and pulled it from theaters after just a few weeks. It flopped. Power never got credit for the work. The Criterion Collection eventually gave it a proper Blu-ray release, cementing its status as a major noir classic. Tarantino's assessment in cinema speculation is unequivocal. While Nightmare Alley is also rightly considered a classic, I still think it's underrated. To me, Nightmare Alley is as good as studio filmmaking ever gets. He calls Power's performance sensational, and notes he's never been fond of the actor in anything else. The screenplay was by Jules Furthman, who also co-wrote Rio Bravo. Tarantino calls Furthman one of my handful of nominees for greatest Hollywood screenwriter of all time. Guillermo del Toro's 2021 remake got 4 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture. It also flopped, making just $39.6 million on a $60 million budget. Some movies are just cursed. Brian De Palma's conspiracy thriller cost $18 million plus another $9 million in marketing from Filmways Pictures. It made about $12 million worldwide, a significant loss. John Travolta starred alongside Nancy Allen and John Lithgow. Critics loved it. Pauline Kael compared it to Altman's Nashville and Coppola's Godfather. Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars, but audiences stayed away, and the film was largely forgotten for decades. The Criterion Collection released a 2K restoration in 2011 and a 4K UHD in 2022, both supervised by De Palma himself. Tarantino never forgot. When he was casting Vincent Vega in Pulp Fiction, he originally wrote the role for Michael Madsen. Madsen chose Wyatt Earp instead. Harvey Weinstein pushed hard for Daniel Day-Lewis. Tarantino wanted John Travolta. To prove his point, he showed Blowout to the Miramax producers and told them if they didn't think it was a great performance, then maybe he shouldn't have been making the film with them in the first place. Travolta got the role. Pulp Fiction revived his career, and it all traces back to this 1981 flop that Tarantino calls one of the greatest films ever made. Tony Scott's final completed film is a runaway train thriller starring Denzel Washington and Chris Pine. It was their fifth collaboration, following Crimson Tide, Man on Fire, Deja Vu, and The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. The film was based on the real-life CSX 8888 incident from 2001, when an unmanned freight train ran wild through Ohio. It cost somewhere between $85 and $100 million, made $168 million worldwide, and earned an Oscar nomination for Best Sound Editing. Tony Scott passed away in August 2012 at age 68. Solid numbers for a final film, but it's not exactly a film that shows up on greatest of all time lists. Unless you're Quentin Tarantino. He ranked Unstoppable 7th on his 2025 list of the best films of the 21st century. His reasoning is pure Tarantino. It's one of the best monster movies of the 21st century. The train is a monster. The train becomes a monster, and it becomes one of the greatest monsters of our time. Stronger than Godzilla, stronger than those King Kong movies. He watched it 4 times and liked it more each viewing. Tony Scott directed True Romance from Tarantino's first screenplay. This pick feels personal. Howard Hawks' Western was the highest-grossing Western of 1959. It cost about $1.2 million to make and earned $5.75 million in US and Canada rentals alone. Hawks credited Ricky Nelson's name with adding around $2 million to the gross. It starred John Wayne, Dean Martin, Angie Dickinson, and Walter Brennan. The film was added to the National Film Registry in 2014, and Tarantino uses it as a dating test. His exact words from a 2007 Cannes screening, "When I'm getting serious about a girl, I show her Rio Bravo and she..." He put it on his 2002 Sight and Sound ballot, but dropped it in 2012 and 2022. That doesn't mean he loves it any less. Rio Bravo is Tarantino's template for what he calls the hangout movie. Characters spending extended time together through dialogue. That's Reservoir Dogs. That's Pulp Fiction. That's Jackie Brown. That's the Hateful Eight. The confined siege structure of Hateful Eight comes directly from Rio Bravo, filtered through John Carpenter's assault on Precinct 13. Hawks declined in his later years, making tired variations of this formula with El Dorado and Rio Lobo. Tarantino has said that decline partially influenced his decision to retire after 10 films. He'd rather quit while he's ahead. Edgar Wright's zombie comedy cost about $6 million and made nearly $39 million worldwide. Simon Pegg and Nick Frost starred alongside Kate Ashfield, Dylan Moran, and Bill Nighy. Rotten Tomatoes has it at 92%. It earned 3 BAFTA nominations. Channel 4 ranked it 3rd on their list of the 50 greatest comedy films. George Romero loved it so much he offered Wright and Pegg cameos in Land of the Dead. Tarantino ranked it 9th on his 21st century list and called it his favorite directorial debut of the century. There's a caveat though. Wright's actual debut was A Fistful of Fingers in 1995. A low-budget spaghetti western spoof. Tarantino acknowledges this in the same breath. Even though he did a cheapy debut movie, he doesn't like to talk about. What matters is the distinction Tarantino draws. It's not a spoof of zombie movies, it's a real zombie movie, and I appreciate the distinction. The two directors became close friends. They formed a pandemic movie club. Tarantino played Wright a Dave D, Dozy, Beaky, Mick and Tish song called Last Night in Soho, and said it was the best title music for a film that's never been made. Wright made that film in 2021. Here's where Tarantino's taste gets genuinely surprising. His #1 pick for the best film of the 21st century isn't a Coen Brothers movie. It's not Paul Thomas Anderson. It's Ridley Scott's 2001 war film about the Battle of Mogadishu. The cast was stacked with future stars including Josh Hartnett, Ewan McGregor, Eric Bana, Orlando Bloom, and Tom Hardy in his very first film role. It cost $92 million to make. Black Hawk Down won 2 Oscars for editing and sound. It made $173 million worldwide, but it rarely appears on best of lists. Tarantino's explanation: this is the only movie that actually goes completely for an Apocalypse Now sense of purpose and visual effect and feeling. And I think it achieves it. It keeps up the intensity for 2 hours, 45 minutes, and my heart was going through the entire runtime of the movie. He admits it took multiple viewings to process. The first time, it was so kind of gobsmacking, I didn't really know what I saw. That's the thing about Tarantino. He trusts his body's response to cinema over critical consensus. His heart rate matters more than Rotten Tomatoes. This is the pick that generated the most buzz when Tarantino revealed his 21st century list. Pixar's threequel ranked second, right behind Black Hawk Down. Lee Unkrich directed. Tom Hanks and Tim Allen returned alongside Joan Cusack, Ned Beatty, and Michael Keaton. It cost $200 million and made over $1 billion worldwide, becoming the first animated film to cross that threshold. It won Best Animated Feature and Best Original Song for Randy Newman's We Belong Together. It was also nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Critics and audiences loved it, but Tarantino's framing elevates it further. He calls Toy Story 3 the good, the bad, and the ugly of animated films. This is the greatest end of a trilogy. From the man who considers Leone's film the pinnacle of cinema, no higher compliment exists. His emotional connection is raw. That last 5 minutes rip. And if I even try to describe the end, I'll start crying and get choked up. He's not being ironic. He's not being contrarian. He genuinely believes this Pixar movie belongs in the conversation with Sergio Leone. Martin Scorsese's portrait of urban alienation appears on all 3 of Tarantino's Sight and Sound ballots. It's one of only 3 films on this list to achieve that distinction. The film cost between $1.3 and $1.9 million and made $28.3 million domestically, finishing as the 17th highest grossing film of 1976. Robert De Niro starred alongside Jodie Foster, Sybil Shepherd, and Harvey Keitel. Bernard Herrmann composed the score. It was his final work. He died just hours after completing it. The film won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. In cinema speculation, it gets 2 full chapters. The first analyzes the film itself. The second asks what would have happened if Brian De Palma had directed it instead. Tarantino's take: I actually do feel that it may be the greatest first-person character study ever committed to film. I really actually can't even think of a second or a third or a fourth that can even come into contention with it. He argues that Travis Bickle might not actually be a Vietnam veteran, that the character is an unreliable narrator. He criticizes the studio's decision to cast Harvey Keitel as Sport instead of a black actor as Paul Schrader originally wrote, calling it a societal compromise that weakened the film's exploration of Bickle's racism. Even his favorite films get the full critical treatment. This is it, the anchor of Tarantino's cinematic worldview. Sergio Leone's spaghetti western has appeared on every single one of his Sight and Sound ballots since 2002. No other film has held that position for over 2 decades. It cost $1.2 million to make and earned over $25 million in the US alone. Clint Eastwood, Lee Van Cleef, and Eli Wallach starred. Ennio Morricone composed the iconic score. A 2003 restoration added 18 minutes of cut footage, with an older Eastwood recording his dialogue for the new scenes. He calls the climactic 3-way standoff my favorite cut in the history of movies. He calls the Dollars trilogy the greatest achievement in the history of cinema. The film's DNA runs through nearly everything Tarantino has made. The Mexican standoffs in Reservoir Dogs, the music cues in Kill Bill Volume 2, Hans Landa's introduction in Inglourious Basterds, the torture plus music sequence that foreshadows Mr. Blonde and Stuck in the Middle with You, the sprawling structure of the Hateful Eight. Clarence in True Romance literally name drops it. When Tarantino compared Toy Story 3 to this film, he was paying the highest tribute in his vocabulary. This is the film that made him who he is. The through line connecting all 15 of these films isn't genre or era. It's intensity of commitment. Whether it's Sergio Leone sustaining tension across a 3-minute standoff, Tobe Hooper building dread through carnival grime, or Ridley Scott maintaining combat adrenaline for nearly 3 hours, Tarantino gravitates toward filmmakers who go all the way. He trusts his own visceral response above consensus. He puts Toy Story 3 beside Taxi Driver. He champions Nightmare Alley over more celebrated noirs. He elevates exploitation films to the same plane as Scorsese. For anyone looking to understand not just what Tarantino watches, but how he watches, these 15 films are the essential syllabus.